You, Eleanor?
Yes, I am.
All right. Well, we're gonna do a quick adjustment. As you all know, we need a replacement for Jake. Eleanor Robinson.
Reynolds.
Yeah. Got it. Is the select board admin committee's recommendation for Jake's replacement. We won't have the next full meeting, the board, for another 2 weeks, the way the calendar falls. So I asked Eleanor to come and sit in. She can't be official or anything, but we'll see what we're all about, and then in 2 weeks we can approve. Excellent. So thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Welcome, Eleanor.
Thank you.
Round of applause.
You'll get one of these fancy, uncomfortable chairs at some point. Okay, so first official item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
So
I have a question. When do I ask that question?
It's right after it being seconded, so
Okay.
ask away.
Section E. When I asked if we couldn't talk to the Salmon Federation again about court passage. And then it says Chris replied that we should not. I don't remember that.
not only did you not remember it, but I was gonna bring up tonight. That in the context of you were looking for people to
Yes.
talk to, and we do have a relationship with them. I strongly recommend that we keep that relationship,
Oh,
not
okay.
expecting anything.
So that needs to be changed in here because I don't, Chris didn't reply that we should not, but maybe replied that we should.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right, it should should not be in there.
Yeah, amazing what one little word can do.
Yeah.
It's funny I wasn't the only one to notice that. But otherwise, how do people like the minutes? All
Okay.
set?
The rest of it was good.
Okay, we've had a first and a second. Somebody, Tracy over there. Okay, first and second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, one item down. Okay, so quick word about email communications. It's a confusing topic with lots and lots of gray areas, so nobody should feel bad about not knowing, because I got to tell you, even after all the years of doing this, I still boo-boo. It's so natural to see something coming in your inbox and feel, oh, I'll just respond to that. But we shouldn't if it basically fits into two broad categories. If it's anything that is trying to form some sort of vote, anything that would be considered to be kind of making a decision, that should never happen in email. The second thing is any kind of discussion that might form a solid opinion or having discussion between us about points that really the public should be seeing. So that's also something we should avoid. But presenting each other with information, absolutely. And even putting some commentary, summaries, and things along with it is okay, but we should just try to keep it brief. Like, I found this, it doesn't look very useful, but I'm passing it along, that sort of thing.
That's okay.
That's fine.
All right. Because I have a hard time not. It is hard.
I know it, but we all use email. I think the problem is that we use email in a certain way. We're all used to communicating with email. And now we're being told not to use email the way we're all used to using email. So it's understandable that some clarifications needed, but just basically passing of information to and fro, so that it can be brought up in the next meeting. Anything kind of clerical, like, oh, I can't make the next meeting. We can, through email, we can make an alternate meeting arrangement. That's fine. That's not really considered a decision. That's clerical. So, kind of bookkeeping stuff. That's all.
Ideas. I mean, if I were looking at options for funding hydro and I thought, oh, here's an interesting idea. Do I have to keep the interesting
Yeah.
part to myself?
Yeah.
Really?
If you've got a piece of information to pass along, that's fine. But anything that would be like inspired discussion directly that coming from you is probably best done here. And, yeah, that's just the general rule is that we don't think about it this way. We don't want to have discussions in email. So starting a discussion in email is going to kind of lead to a discussion in email.
So in case, I like what Sandy did in terms of trying to put together that sheet.
Yep.
That lists up stuff like that, which we would call research that we're doing.
Absolutely.
Send out to the group or send out individually.
Yep.
You know, I do a lot of work, for example, where I'm putting together a project and Sandy's worked with me on this in the past. And I'll get to a certain point where, okay, I need some opinions and I don't want to take it and send it out to the group yet. But if I send it to one or two or three people and say, hey, you know, is there something I got wrong here? Then send it out to the crew when it's ready, for example, for a presentation.
Correcting and things, we got to be careful about having there be any more than, say, 3 or 4 of us involved in any one discussion. Because again, it's that perception of building a consensus outside of the public forum.
Don't want that.
Don't want that.
But as far as passing information,
Sure.
Sandy did great.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sandy sending the information out to us so that we have it to review
Right.
before the meeting.
Perfect.
Absolutely awesome.
So to take that a little further, let's say, and I don't know if this is true, but let's say people think, oh, you know, this isn't a bad format to collect links to information.
Mhm.
Do we have the option of a Google Docs thing so that, I mean, maybe you'd want to be careful that not everybody has right access to it because somebody might get in there and mess it up.
Yeah.
But is that kind of thing possible, or do we have to wait until we have a meeting to share any updates to these kinds of things?
No, you can share the updates, could be, again, you can disseminate
With email.
information. We just got to avoid
Okay.
having discussions about it. Also pointing out, you know, again, clerical stuff is never a problem. Like, you sent something and the columns were pushed. I mean, don't worry about any stuff like that. Having that sort of clerical discussion. But we just got to avoid discussions that have some sense of direction or influence over where we're headed, because that really should be done here with everybody present, and open to the public.
Okay. So even though we are, I mean, we are a working committee, right? I
Yes.
mean, we come in here, we have a job to do.
Mhm.
But we still are under the same set of rules and protocol as, say, the select board
Yes.
or any of those other.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just the best way of thinking about it, and getting us prepared to have a more efficient meeting is fine, but we just got to avoid discussion, debate, and trying to yeah, well, that's it, discussion and debate.
You know, I noticed, Steve, and I don't want to go off point, that the town manager hasn't been here a couple of times, and I don't know what's going on, but if there is he still in our email chain? Does he still have access to that, or is that going to be a conference with he's on some sort of leave or something? I don't know what's going on, but.
Yeah, and if we drop them off on the CC, then you should still be on. So, yeah, I mean, no change there.
One back to Sandy's point about, I have some brilliant idea, which you do actually, some brilliant idea. I think a qualifier to this general rule is that, if she's got, or any of us have brilliant ideas, to share them by email with the chair and with the project director, with the possibility of getting those things on the agenda.
Yes, thank you for
Okay.
pointing that out. Absolutely, and we did that. Sean raised a couple of points that are on the agenda. That's to get us ready for the next meeting. And Chris had something similar. He sent it to
Mhm.
myself and Alcina and say, can we get this on the agenda? Because individually, we don't know collectively what's going on the agenda. And so, yeah, just think about it. Anything that's administrative, is generally fine. Okay,
One other request,
yes.
22 emails in a thread is getting to be too long.
Yeah, it's confusing.
At some point, I can't figure out what order they're in.
Yeah.
So we just, don't be afraid to drop it and start a new thread.
Yes.
That's all I'm
Good idea.
saying.
The other side of that with Sandy is just thank you, Sandy, thank you, Alcina, thank you, Chris. Like, we all want to be polite, yes, we all got it, but is there some new way? What's the new etiquette of, I got the friggin' email. I've read it, I don't need to tell everybody.
Yeah,
That's hard because there are 5 emails on the chain that are just saying, thank you.
yeah, yeah, and I'm
Is
guilty
that
of that too.
necessary nowadays?
No, for me, just send me flowers.
Thank you.
Or the other option is don't contain the text of the previous email.
Yes.
Which is what I do as a standard.
Yeah.
Because that way you don't end up with,
Yeah,
No, but you still have this long thread, and
Yeah.
after 22, I was
It's easy
like,
to reply.
I
all
gotta
at
do
the time.
something else.
Putting in everybody's name individually.
You guys know about email rules to just delete crap?
Oh,
Yeah.
but
So there's a rule that if there's more than 5 in this thread, delete them all.
he is pulling your leg.
Not much.
All right, okay, we're all set?
I'm all set.
Excellent. Okay, so now on to what will probably be the biggest of them all for this is, and I put it a little bit ahead just in case we do run out of time, we can push some of these other ones. But, the Kleinschmidt report proposal. Which, of course, I forgot to bring a copy of.
You didn't have it from last time?
Yeah, no, I've read it, I just neglected to bring it back.
Everybody should have gone.
So,
The one that was sort of saying, yeah, with that stuff.
yeah, so to just frame this, the select board reviewed it. We had a discussion about it and the select board felt that it was within our budgetary, it was not only was the proposal in the ballpark that we were expecting, but it's within our budget. So the board of selectmen said, basically authorized me to sign if we all vote to go ahead with it. I'll sign and we can get it started tomorrow and not have to wait for 2 weeks for the next meeting.
So you did that? So you did that?
No, I have not signed
Okay,
because
right.
we all have to vote.
Right.
So, if everybody's had a chance to review it, were there any questions about it? We did have some, and Sandy, there's another example, asking a question that we need to put forward. Sandy said, are they going to include the, presentation of it?
In the Q&A.
A Q&A. So asking that to an email, that's an example of perfect, because that's administrative and we did need to check that out. The answer back was yes, it is included. No public meetings. So if we wanted to hold a hearing or something like that and have them present, then that's the additional cost.
You answered my question with D coming up next, the timeline of this, the fourth of it. Like, I said, they'll have the public hearings and things like that.
Yeah, those are down the road, and if we do want them, if we feel that there's value, and then we've got to pay by the hour. And they had their rate, they did include their rate sheet, their proposal. Okay.
We have to vote on that?
Yes, so is there any, yeah, why don't we do a first and a second, and then we'll-
That motion? to approve.
okay? So, do we want to discuss any of the details on it? It's pretty straightforward, it was what we asked them to do.
Need to do it.
Yep. Okay, well, no further discussion, all in favor? Tracy, are you in or?
No, I'm out.
Okay, so it's, whatever we
Go
had.
Well, you get your majority, right?
Yeah, we just got it. We have, your one counts.
Didn't get a chance to read it over.
It's okay. No, I'm at a point where I've talked to a few people and I really don't see that the hydros are feasible. Yeah. In any way, shape or form. Yeah. And my own opinion is that we just move past that and get on with fixing the dam.
Okay. Let's keep that discussion going. I like that. And I think.
I don't mean to disrupt anybody.
No, that's, it's valuable
My
opinion.
personal opinion.
It's mine as well. We've talked about this in the past. It's just, unfortunately, there is a standing perception out there with a group of people that we didn't do, the previous committee didn't do its homework. And so I think in all fairness, we just need to, it stinks to spend money on that, but, I think we need to just get that nailed down and quickly, as well. And just to very, very briefly tie into one of the articles that Sandy had in hers. There was what was in Michigan, they had 13 dams and they said, we're done, we're out, it's too expensive. And that's a company that already owned them and was making money off of them. So, yeah. Chris.
Yeah, we may think we know what the outcome's gonna be. But unlike the last committee, I really think we really wanna make sure we've turned over every rock and that we are rock solid in our own terms. That these and having some spending, it's not a trivial amount of money. But even so, this is really an important question. And there's 1% chance that we should be doing hydro. We ought to explore that to the fullest. I think this Kleinschmidt proposal that's in hand gives us the data we need to really put this to rest or leave it on the table. So I would be really reluctant to go back and say, well, we don't think we should do it. No, I did that before. Let's not do that again.
Yeah, and as we've discussed before, the decision that comes out of this process is basically permanent. That if we surrender the hydro, it's gone for good. And if we decide to retain it, there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done, not by us, to make that happen. So
I'd like to reinforce with Chris, having observed the last committee and the committee operation and meetings to it. I think we would be remiss if it were $100,000, $200,000 for that. Somebody would have to do a cost benefit analysis.
Yeah.
But I think we would be remiss at that ability to have a second opinion.
Well, I agree with you, Tracy. I also know this is a transparent way to go.
yeah,
Okay, absolutely.
I do agree with you.
yeah,
It will work with you.
yeah.
Sure.
No, it's fine. And
But the problem is we all always agree.
yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't think we really disagree on the substance of it. It's
Right.
just the approach, and so that's all good. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, so the next one is the project next steps and timeline, which
Copies.
Chris.
Oh, do it copies.
Should have had one.
Everybody should have a copy.
Oh, yes.
Roadmap. This is the single page, yeah.
Okay.
Is that right?
No.
I think,
Did we vote on it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, and then we went back and discussed.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have 3 pieces of paper. Thank you. I'll see you. 3 pieces of paper. The top one is called a roadmap for saving the dam, dated today. This was in response to Charles. This was in response to Charles's comment in open session last time that we really need a roadmap. And I used to do roadmaps for a living with Gantt charts and flow charts and all that. And I thought it was just a good idea to start listing things that need to be done. And you guys are better at this than I am. So I prepared this document. If I take you through it, it's all right?
Yep,
Okay.
I like that.
All right. I'm envisioning at the end of this project, our project, that we'll do a report and we'll put it to the select board. And, they can do with it as they see fit. And the report basically is what we're supposed to do, that one sentence we worked on last week, who's on the committee, what we did, and what the plan is to save the dam. Okay? Be pretty straightforward. Now, in order to do that, number one, the Kleinschmidt proposal we just talked about, we need to get through that because as we all know, there's a huge fork if we do an amendment or we do a surrender to FERC. We've got a lot of research, and I think I could have gone all the way up to letter P. You guys can add more. Other dam salvage efforts, more work on the deficiency issues that we started last week. We need to come up with a cost worksheet, which I'll do in a minute. The fifth passage alternatives, incident, the last group had a very good presentation by Interblue on fifth passage alternatives that we might want to look at. The regulatory thicket. It's not just FERC. What FERC's going to get our plan and they'll distribute it for comment to 15 other agencies, state and federal. We need to understand what that thicket is and how to work with that thicket, whatever that means. This gets you into lobbyists and such. Obviously, the potential funding sources, Sandy. I think along the way, we're going to need to get a consulting engineer to give us some serious help on coming up with what we think it's going to take to keep the dam. That's going to involve some significant dollars and time and effort. And then at the end of this, I think we ought to meet with the town and share with them where we're at. We've done the research. The funding issue, Sandy, this is your bailiwick, not mine. But to start with, interim funding for our work, just this project, I think we're going to be looking for a significant amount of money, and I put down the number 100,000, 200, nothing but just to give us a sense of the magnitude. We're not talking about $35,000 here. How we get that done is going to be an issue. Obviously, funding sources, we need to work those sources. I think when we come back with the plan, we ought to have a pretty good idea that these are useful funding sources, even though we don't have commitments from anybody. And we should come back with a plan with thinking that this much we can get externally. We're 82% or 100% sure of that. We may need to do some self-funding. I think we're going to have to be prepared to speak on that level as we come back with our plan. Then we're going to have to work with the regulatory thicket. At that point, I think we're prepared to develop the plan, which is the surrender or amendment. We're going to have to come up with our task list and cost estimates, certified again with some believability by everybody in town as to what those numbers really are, and then do some narrative, and at which point we present it to the select board, etc. Now, I think we're going to need some external help. We're going to, to my mind at least, we're going to definitely want a consulting engineer. Somebody's going to have to get us through this regulatory thicket. People who know what they're doing. I don't know who that is. We're going to need some legal work along the line somewhere, in my mind. And we're going to want some fundraising assistance, because at some point we're going to want to get in touch with fundraising agencies and start talking with them. And in my experience, doing this level of fundraising, it's always useful to have people who work by the hour or the project. These are not trivial activities. I don't have a flow chart out of this. I don't know if you guys can see a flow chart out of this, but I do see these basically pretty much serial steps in this. So is this helpful to get us started to respond to Charles's question? Yes.
Just
Go on, Tammy.
to meet with the town, does that mean meet with the selectmen, or does that mean have a public hearing?
That means public hearing, lots of public hearings. Okay. Certainly, as we think about this as a research stage, okay, I think at the end, well, no, there's 2 points. You see 1C is meet with the town, another one. If we dispose one way or another with I'll call it the Kleinschmidt report, we'll get the town together and do 2 things. Number one, share that and get comments. And number 2, share with them this revised and turned to a proper flow chart now, so they know what we're doing and where we're going. Yep. So 1C and 2H, definitely. Okay? All right on this, comments? I like to think of this as a living document, and hopefully somebody really does flowcharts and can do that and take a stab at where we are when we get to number 6A, which is we're presenting something to the select board. I have no idea how long it's gonna take. You guys? Looking at what's on here?
We know what our timeline is for on the FERC. That's the only, at present, that's the only time ticker.
And that's gonna be the driving force.
Yeah.
Because we have to answer first. Because that, we go beyond that deadline, we're running and go. So it's probably, so we have to have a plan in place and pretty much sealed by the 25th of June next year.
I sense that as long as FERC recognizes that we're working diligently and honestly.
And have already come to a decision. That's, I think, what they're gonna be looking for.
As far as, the amendment or.
Yeah, if we start getting close to that deadline and we're still trying to figure out whether we're gonna surrender or ask for amend, I think they're gonna be unhappy.
But basically what I'm hearing is that the client should report, once we go through that part of it, that should put to bed the issue with the hydro.
Should.
And at that point, then we should be able to make the decision whether or not we surrender. That should answer the question, we're surrendering the exemption. Doesn't mean we're getting rid of the dam, but we're not gonna produce hydroelectric power.
Right.
And then when we enter that phase, then we have to come up with a plan to repair the dam, make sure that it meets all specifications and safety.
That's right. So let's assume, taking Tracy's stance for a moment, let's assume that we're gonna make the decision that we want to surrender that license. Okay. I would guess that Jack, gets a hold of FERC and says, we've made the decision that we want to do a surrender. And now we're gonna need time to prepare that. Okay. And I would suspect that we could get an extension to allow us to do that. Because in my mind, at least, I don't want to rush the plan.
And they don't want us to rush the plan.
Right. So let's say that somewhere in January and February, Jack makes that call and looks for the extension. Well, when do you think you're going to have your surrender plan? Well, to my mind, we have the surrender plan when we've shown the town with a fair degree of confidence of what it's going to cost the town, like zero, hopefully, to do this. And that means that we need to have a pretty good idea of what to do in this means financially. So if it takes us a year to get through all of this crap, and I've probably got a third of what we're going to need to do on this paper, I'm okay with that.
So that means this committee doesn't necessarily have a drop dead date like we're finished. We could, like you said, if that could extend it, our work could go into year after. We can still have this committee meeting.
Yep, and we can always rotate out individuals. The committee can stay alive
Or retire.
or retire. The one thing about that is, so the select board will make the decision whether or not to accept the recommendation of basically keeping the hydro or getting rid of it, the exemption or not exemption. So select board will be the decision maker on that. We will have had several meetings before then, public hearings. So there's nobody should be surprised at where we're headed with it, one way or the other. Then we get into a regulatory process, which is kind of above our pay grade. We're here to advise, not to actually do physical work on that exemption plan. That's where the big money is going to come in, because an engineering firm is going to have to be hired to do all of that. We will be there to advise the engineering firm based on other discussions that we will be having going forward. One thing that is not in Chris's timeline is, because the amount of money is significant, that amount of money have to be specifically allocated and approved of by the townspeople. And so it's not just an agreed, that it's gotta happen. The town does not have fiduciary responsibility to spend that amount of money for something that wasn't.
This is 3A, right? That you're talking about.
So,
No.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's probably not much more money than we've already spent, if there's anything else, whether it be 3A or something else.
Some interim funding, we already spent 19.7 out of that, we could get 120, this is the start of that.
Yeah, no, this is on top of. And so, that $100,000 to $200,000 estimate is for the actual engineering work. Right now, we're just spending for the.
That's some legal work.
Yeah.
And probably some work thicket consulting work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe some fundraising, digging up work. We don't know.
So the one thing that's missing on here that we need to put in is that at some point before we actually get to being able to do anything with funding, we have to secure the funding from a vote. And then we get into the issue that we've discussed before about what happens if people say that they don't want to spend the money on trying to figure out a way of fixing the dam. And just like every time that's been brought up, it's a possibility, and there's nothing that we can do preventatively other than just trying to have the best informed voters out there about what the issues are. And I mean, this could, I don't want to prejudge anything, but if we ask the townspeople for the money that is necessary to do the study to get the process, keep the process going, if that's rejected, then we're going to have to turn this over, put this down, and figure out what to do next, because without money, we can't do anything effectively. And
So before it even gets to the town, this Chris's 3A, 100, 200, 300,000, is that gonna land on the budget advisory committee to sort of say yes to go into the budget so that the town gets the vote?
because of the timing,
Yeah,
I'm thinking that it would probably need to be a special town meeting.
okay.
So in other words, we can't wait till June of next year to get.
Yeah.
Great.
Unless we all want to take 6 months off.
No, what you can do, in pretty short order, if you like this, is to begin to talk to consulting engineers. I would go visit with our congressional rep person or state senate person and figure out who is probably useful contacts to get us through the FERC ticket and get some initial numbers so that you got something to have a special town meeting on.
Yeah.
We could do some free work to get a pretty decent estimate to make that 100,000 or 20,000 or 500,000, whatever the hell the number is, and take your town meeting on that.
Yeah, so we have enough information already in hand to get, basically to solicit. Once we figure out about hydro or not hydro, that's the other important thing. If hydro is in the equation or it's out of the equation, that changes the engineering study dramatically. So, but we already know that's our first order of business.
I think before we put anything like the money to a vote for the town, it has to be crystal clear on paper. Do we as a town have penalties if we do not fix this dam? Because if people see, if we don't fix it, here's what the penalties are.
Yeah.
Then that's going to tell, okay, if we don't fix it, we might pay more.
Yeah.
So that needs to be crystal clear, it needs to be documented. These are the penalties, if any, if we do not fix this.
Yeah, it's even bigger than that because, even if, let's just say FERC sends us a letter and says, oh, we just changed our mind, we don't really care what you do with it. Even if they did that, we'd still have to figure out how to fix the thing, otherwise it's gonna blow out and eventually. It was one of the first things I looked at was a town around our size was trying to keep their dam, and in the meantime, it blew out. So that answered the question, it got rid of the dam. So to Sean's point, the engineering study, the money necessary for that engineering study is completely, it really is separate from the FERC. It's a safety issue. We need to maintain it. If we're gonna retain it, we need to maintain it. And that is going to require engineers to figure out how much it's going to cost to get it fixed. And then after that, where's the money gonna come from? So the best we can do, is to stay focused on the hydro issue, because that drives everything else. And see about getting, lining up some of this other stuff.
So my question is, do we need to kind of come up with some type of timeline in a sense, because we're doing a lot of talking, but the question is, Kleinschmidt, i.e. Kleinschmidt report done November blah, town meeting this date to discuss the Kleinschmidt and the hydro, because that's going to be the decision point there. We need to bring it to the people of the town and say, this is what we found about the hydro. Hydro is either a yay or a nay. This is what's going to cost you if you decide you want to repair it. Is it viable or not viable? That has to come out. And once that decision is made, then we move into phase 2.
Great. Which is really all the rest of the research.
Yeah, right. So should we look at that and come up with a tentative timeline? Because we need to start thinking down the line and getting that out there to people, saying that the big thing could be, how fast does Kleinschmidt turn around this report? Because once we have that information, then we can put together a presentation and go to the town.
Well, David, what if, like at our next meeting, somebody, looking at you, David. Well, actually, all of us, okay? What if we really fleshed out section 2 here, the research piece? What else needs to be done to do the research? So we have the information in hand and we can start working, right? What if at the next meeting, you could pick an arbitrary date for the Kleinschmidt delivery, which is called day 1, whatever they get it back.
Right.
Okay? If we have a meeting, we agree on what we should do. At that meeting, we call the next, the town meeting and prepare ourselves for that. Okay?
I think that's,
Given that we have the town meeting, then we have however many days you think we might need to do research. Well, I think you could be, somebody like you could begin to construct an actual timeline based on that. Given the Kleinschmidt report is day 1.
I have a pretty full palette right now, but I can certainly work with everybody to come up with a timeline. I certainly think that that's reasonable. And I think we do need to do that, because ideally, I'd like to see, personally, I think we need to get this done by the first of the year.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I think it's going to be, so,
With the holidays coming up and everything.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
thing, holidays are coming up, and I think we need to close that chapter of the book.
So when you say this is done, are you referring to the Kleinschmidt?
Yeah,
well,
and the meeting.
Hydro or
having a
no
town-
hydro?
Hydro, no hydro, have the town meeting, present it, and then go
Get
from
that
there.
side.
Fine, I think it's good. So that's, you're beginning to put some real dates, even though it's starting from day 1,
Right.
on this. I think that's wonderful.
The Kleinschmidt report does have a suggested delivery date.
Mid-November.
Yeah.
Week of November 11th.
Yeah. Which, based on, we give them the thumbs up tomorrow, then, yeah, so middle of November.
Okay, good start. All right, I have 2 other documents for you. In our last meeting, I put on the PowerPoint proposal some whopping numbers. And those numbers came from the Gomez and Sullivan documents that you had copies of. And they also came from the interfluence numbers, which are part of the last committee. And I thought it was useful, and we talked about this last time. Get it clear. You have 2 spreadsheets in front of you. One is called the vertical slot, and one is called the N6 nature first weight construct. You got them? Okay. And basically what this is ripped out of interfluence estimates for dollars. And these are the steps 1 through 17 of actual construction, including number 1, which is contingency. And then lines 21 through 27 were what I'll call overhead: project management, engineering for permitting, engineering design, contract administration, etc. Okay, and now that was the total, okay? And if you look down through 1 through 17, I think it looks reasonably understandable. There's nothing on there that should cause us any, what the heck is this issue?
Good start.
Okay, now,
Maybe additions.
the next document is N6A Nature Fishway Construct. One of the things that that group really liked was, okay, keep the impoundment, do away with the dam, that's fine. And they did just that. They gave us a set of numbers. And you'll notice there 1 through 17, the overhead, the 24 through 30 are pretty much the same. 1 through 17, they're different. This was just to cheat a little bit. This is a much bigger number, but you get an idea of the sorts of categories. I believe that as we get ready to write our report, we should expect to have this level of detail for whatever it is that we want to be in the plan. Okay. In other words, nobody comes back to us and says, oh, we'll do it for $3 million. No. Let's define it more properly. So to me, this is a template that probably is 82.5% complete for what we're going to want to be doing as we work with whatever consulting engineer. Incidentally, Interflu, obviously hired by NOAA in the last one, they did this. We could certainly be talking to them about doing it again, but I don't want to contaminate our next work with the last one. But so we have something to start on. Okay, is this helpful as we get down the pike? Yeah. Bill, God love him, took all of this stuff and you turned it into a pretty working spreadsheet so we can just plug numbers in and come up with totals.
Would you like me to present that at the next meeting?
Sure.
Do that and show you kind of the organization as to how we can look at what the alternatives are.
Yeah, and, yeah, I think that will be very useful.
And what I'll do is I'll plug in the numbers that were from the previous.
Yeah.
With the caveat that everybody understands that just what was just mentioned, that's a starting point, as a
Yeah.
placeholder. They can be changed to whatever client comes back with, whatever a subsequent group comes back with.
Yeah.
Just get a point where we can start to formulate in our own head.
Yeah, and also it gives us a general ballpark idea of where all that money fits into the individual aspects of remediation.
And what else needs to be added, of course, to, as you do that presentation, is what are the ongoing costs?
Deal with both capital and continuing.
Absolutely,
Yes.
O&M and overall life cycle cost. Basically what we're looking for. All right, so I hope these are helpful.
I'll try and include a line because 2 meetings ago when we were in August, I was the one that raised my hand and got pretty well shot at and I felt good about it. But somebody else at least thought about it and it's good. That whole issue of what happens if we say no. We don't want to go, we're going to put a number there, but we don't want to go, for example, we agreed at that point to go first and say, hey, what if we, the town says no and we have to extend out, what are the penalties going to be? I agree with that logic.
Yeah.
I'll at least put a line or something.
Yeah,
And if there are other holes in the analysis or in the pieces, more than happy.
Yep.
It needs to be comprehensive because the voters need to also understand, even though they're voting for, a chunk of money, there's maintenance costs going forward. We have to maintain that. You probably need to have a capital account for the damn meeting.
Right.
So all these things are coming down and those will be in the annual budget. So voters need to know all this information as much as they can.
yeah, and to that point, what I would be looking for is when we ask the townspeople to approve the funding for the project, whatever that funding amount is.
Interim funding.
No, not the interim funding, the funding
The
for the
entire
actual project itself. So whatever form that takes. And we've already figured in federal and state and private funding sources. And we've come up with a number of, well, here's how much the town has to pay into it just for the project. I say in that this would be my personal opinion is at the same time, we tell people, yeah, not only is it going to be this amount to get it fixed, but you're also going to authorize the town to keep a capital budget and an initial amount would be proposed, which, as can happen with any capital budget, it can change over time. But we need to get people to understand that this is not a one and done, that it's not gonna be maintenance free. And we're not, and the thing is, we're unlikely to fix everything that's on there as if it's gonna be brand new. So there's gonna be some things that probably the engineer's gonna look at and say, well, you got another 15 years on this. And as long as they sign off on it and FERC's okay with it, then we can leave it as is. But then that means in 15 years, we're gonna have to do something with it. So, totally in agreement. People have to understand what it's gonna cost and, in total.
So at this point, what we're looking for on Bill actually is a structure so that we can begin to think about these things and start plugging numbers in and asking questions. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So put that on the agenda for next.
Yeah, that'd be great. And starting with the numbers that anybody can question the numbers that we have, but they are numbers. And that's better than just putting zeros in there, because we know zero is not really appropriate.
By having the structure, then as people look at it and look at a piece like this, they can come to a particular line and say, oh, I think line number 11, return, timber grid is not 200,000, it's actually gonna be 500,000.
Yeah. And that's,
But at some point, we revise it, but I agreed to.
yeah. So I think we're all in agreement as to what the numbers that you can plug in represent. They just represent a starting point and,
Placeholder.
a placeholder. Because we also know that anytime an engineering firm gives you a quote, you've got about 1 month before it goes up.
Boston have a problem?
So, is there, I don't know, does the dam administratively, does it just fall under, the town-owned property, like in the future, is it gonna be a public works thing? And who's gonna be responsible for owning the dam? Like, what line items are gonna be in a public works budget, town budget, our own utility?
Probably, yeah, I agree with Tracy. It would, at that point, we would probably have it as its own line item in there and everything. We do this with the airport, for example. The airport is broken out as a separate entity inside of the town. There's not a damn an airport department.
But, which is an interesting point. One of the people I'd like to get in front of us is Tom Rotana.
Yeah.
Who, keeps the, dam right now. And I'd love to hear his thoughts. I don't know what they are. But he's the guy who raises and lowers the gates and meets with the people who are the licensing agencies. And I'd like to get on the agenda, maybe next time it's up to you guys, but, just come in and interview him as a witness.
And who does he works for the town,
He works
public
with-
works?
He's the flower guy
Town.
and cuts the grass and keeps the cemeteries looking good.
I see him go around to the dam from my apartment every week or so. He cleans out the gates, stuff like that.
Yeah. So he does basically our ongoing, day-to-day maintenance on it. And we hope we don't need to mess with the gates because
They might fall.
they might seize. I mean, there's always, this is why we're here. It's because they're not new.
So I think hearing from Tom would be a useful piece of research.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can reach out, I'll reach out to Tom.
I did reach out to Representative Perkins. He was gonna try to make it today, but he couldn't. He's at a funeral, so as soon as I give him a date, a future meeting, see if he can attend to this.
So are we okay on, D&E?
I think so. Any more discussion on D&E for now?
Ultimately, can you have a column in there for, not only the cost, but the source?
Oh, yeah.
It would be interesting because I know I come up next, but some of these things you might find money for and others you would not.
Right.
So some, the town might have to pay some, somebody else might be willing to pay for other parts, and some it might be a little of both. And so that would be another piece in the end.
And anything that's in there should be sourced either on a side piece,
Yeah,
further south, or as a note, inserted onto.
I know your
particular one.
spreadsheet. I can picture it.
Yeah. We've worked
Bill and I
together
worked together a
a
long time.
long time.
Excellent. Okay, so Sandy,
Well, not everybody has a copy. I emailed a copy of this to the committee. I don't know, Alcina, I did copy you, if you can bring it up. I'm not sure that we need to go through any of these in detail, but if you'll humor me, I'll just tell you kind of my opinions, and I'll try to keep them to a minimum, and what I found in looking at this. But I spent several days just looking for, towns that repaired dams, towns that repaired hydro, people that built fish passage, alternatives to dam removal. I mean, everything I could come up with. I tried to Google it and found, sometimes it's YouTube videos, sometimes it's white papers, sometimes it just took me to a few engineering companies. I will tell you that I found no example of any town that found money to simply fix a dam. And I think the moral of that is probably an opinion, but the moral of that is nobody's going to give you money to keep things the way they are. I kind of think that's true. Just and so actually let me jump ahead and say one of my frustrations or one of my concerns is that we keep talking about the plan, and I don't know what that is. I mean, one option is just figure out what we got to do to pull a handsprinter and patch that thing up, do it for $2 million and hope that gets us by, right? If that's an option, if that's what we as a town want to do, I think it is virtually impossible that we are going to find anybody to give us money for that. Now, there may be other people, and I would welcome anybody who wanted to try to find options where somebody's willing to give you money to maintain the status quo. But it's not easy.
Okay. That reminds me of Tracy just voting no on our last,
Yeah,
and we may think we know the result, and we may be as sure as God knowing when the next earthquake's gonna be.
yeah.
That said, there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be overturned in order for us to really be able to go back with confidence.
No question.
What I would do, for instance,
What's that?
I would work every one of my contacts on line G of public entities. I started having serious conversations with them about possibilities, including where do they know about, including other countries.
Yeah.
And secondly, what federal agencies might be willing to assist us, et cetera. My point is, there's a whole lot of rocks to overturn
No question.
before we end up where you are right now.
And that's why I said, it's an opinion, and I'm not saying it's the answer. And I did find a few examples, right? There was, there's an article, I haven't read every word, in the Adirondacks where they're actually working to go the other way to save salmon, right? I mean, if you look down through here, there's a thing about in the Adirondack State Park, they're talking about keeping dams in the wilderness and doing that to support salmon instead of hinder them. So there are articles, there are people and organizations that are starting to think that maybe the pendulum has swung too far,
Sure.
Everybody put in dams and now everybody wants to take the damn things out, right? Well, it'd be a real shame if 20 years from now, everybody's like, damn it, I wish we hadn't done that,
Good.
right? So I agree with you.
You're not prepared to give up.
I am not on anything. I'm saying that this all or nothing thing is not the right answer. And it's certainly not the right answer for us. But I will also say that I really struggled to find any examples of situations where people found funding to save a dam.
Good.
There is a damsafety.org
Right.
who lists state organizations who have funding to repair dams. The problem is, in most cases, they're high hazard.
Yeah.
That's the difficulty. But I took down everything I found. There's an engineering firm who has a white paper about dam modification provides an alternative to complete removal. There are organizations out there. In cases like that, I think the next step, I would call those guys and say, can what have you found? So at this point, all I've done is that first brush of, if it says dam or hydro or fish, it's on the list,
Good.
right? I
Great.
mean, I didn't filter anything.
No, and that's good.
So I would encourage you to just look at these, and the ones I did in green were the ones that I found a little more interesting. There was this National Trust for Historic Preservation that did have a dam that had, in their case, they had a cool,
Yeah, it was beautiful.
uh,
Yeah, the gatehouse. Yeah.
gatehouse, but they found money. So now I'm gonna move on to hydro and say, I'm reading these things and I'm thinking, what can we do? What can we do? I'm not mistaken, the powerhouse is historical, right?
Yeah.
No, well,
I was told it was
Anyway,
listed somewhere, but the problem is FERC has their fingers in it, so you can't, nobody wants to deal with it.
Well,
FERC's got their-
right, the other issue is that it's not really aesthetic. The one in the Adirondacks is gorgeous. I'd want that.
all right, so maybe we could make it aesthetically
Well,
pleasing.
but then.
In 200 years from now,
then it's
somebody's
no
saying,
longer- Then it's no longer historical.
Anyway, I'm just,
Yeah, that's
all
true.
right, I'm
It's gotta be
thinking
original.
things. So, because I found lots of places, and I'm sure everybody's seen them, but there are lots of organizations out there that do have money for hydro. Again, not often for ones our size.
Yeah.
So then I'm thinking, well, what kind of hook? Because I think that's what we need. This is opinion.
We could write a song.
We need a hook. We need something that somebody says, oh, man, that's interesting. Could we restore that hydro and make it an educational thing that went with the high school? And would somebody then be willing to give you money to have it run? Even if it on its own wasn't a viable commercial enterprise. I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm saying that kind of thing. Skowhegan put some kind of, or are putting some kind of $6 million plate in the Kennebec that they're gonna raise and lower to create whitewater for competitions. All right, again, I'm not saying that's us, but I'm saying we need that hook. We need that thing that says, this makes Dover-Foxcroft different. This makes a reason that somebody wants to put $5, $6, $8, $10 million into doing that.
Right.
So I did go beyond and started looking for alternatives to dam removal. And I included a lot there. There were a bunch of examples of that, both rocks above the dam and rocks below the dam. And I couldn't find a rocks below the dam example in what the Salmon Federation did before. But there's some interesting, again, I encourage you to read them. You don't have to read every word, but like there's this theory that these low head dams, create so much turbulence that kids get caught in there, they die, right? So they're killer dams. So and they're killer to fish. So they're leaving the dam and then filling in below it with rocks. I don't know. Could you still produce hydro if you did that? I don't know. So I guess in the end, what I did here was look for fixing the dam, alternatives to fixing the dam, basically fish passage. Fish passage with and without hydro, I didn't really separate that out. Things looking for hydro funding. Klein Schmidt has on their LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
Hydro funding opportunities.
Right. So, Sandy,
Anyway,
yeah.
that's what I did. And it just, I think for me at this point, the value of this was not that I went, aha, there's money. What it did was made me think more about what can we do to find that thing that makes our town and our project an attractive one. Because if it's just plain old, it's gonna be a lot of work.
Yeah, so
And that's not-
yeah, thank you very much. I looked over all of the kind of the case study articles that you had in there.
Yeah,
And it reinforced everything that we've been hearing, which is why would anybody want to park a couple $1 million and see it go away into something that is not needed from a hazard mitigation standpoint or hydro standpoint. In other words, it doesn't serve a functional purpose. So some of those examples you had in there were because they were high hazard dam.
Mhm.
And so removing it was not really a good option. And then the other one being the hydro. And we're getting the final answer, obviously working through on the hydro, but it doesn't look very good. And we knew this going into the project. And we can't change the status of the dam in terms of how it is rated in terms of high hazard or low hazard. So those two things, if we have confirmed for us that hydro is not viable, those two things are the two things that we could, I wouldn't say easily get money for, but there's more established paths to getting money. And neither one of those seem to be available to us. There's nothing really of historic nature. You noticed on that one about the Adirondack Dam, it was for the gatehouse. It wasn't for the dam itself. So there's that. The thing we have to be, it's great to envision what could this dam provide in some way, shape, or form that somebody would want to put money into it, even though that could basically give a reason to put money into it. I gotta say, that's a 5 to 10 year experiment. And it might come up with nothing. We don't have that kind of time. So, because FERC is not gonna say, oh, we'll give you 5 years to figure out if there's water rafting or something to do with it. They won't give us that amount of time. And it's very unlikely because we don't have, nobody right now has an idea of some other use for the dam other than the impounding. The impoundment there, obviously. So it seems to me that would be, of all the things, the longest of long shots. Is because first you'd have to come up with an idea, then you'd have to spend money to find out if that's viable. Then you have to spend money to figure out how to make it happen. Then you'd have to raise the money for it. So it's like adding more steps and more costs. It's not like, oh, I've got a great idea, we can just jump right to it. And we don't even have an idea. So I don't think that is, and again, the government's not going to give us time to get that all sorted out. Certain aspects of the dam might be able to fit into that category. And then obviously the fishway is the big one. If we can develop a fishway that is attractive to investors and environmental groups for the most part, then yeah, I think that it is entirely possible that that portion of the dam can be funded. And that is really the only thing that I think anybody would have any interest in. Because, you know, I'll be facetious about it. We go to Atlantic Salmon Federation and say, well, we came up with a fishway design. It meets minimum standards. And they're like, well, we would really like it to be better than minimum. I'm like, okay, well, you write the checks, we'll make it better. And that is entirely possible, that we could come up with a design which meets FERC's minimums. But the Atlantic Salmon Federation or a group like that might say, well, you know what? Would you be opposed to doing it a different way if we funded it? And probably the answer would be yes. So I think that's our primary avenue for finding funding.
See that too, yeah, pretty much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sandy.
And tying into what Bill's gonna do, then we will be able to see how, with the spreadsheet, we'll see, we can make a best case assumption. The fishway is paid for by somebody else. What does the rest of it look like? It's gonna be more than special.
Who had G?
I think that was just open. I don't think anybody, one of the things that Sandy, in reviewing Sandy's work that came up on several of those is state money.
Mhm.
And now again, it's state money to fix either a high hazard dam or a hydro or something of historic value. But, the state's got more of a vested interest in what happens within its borders than the federal government.
Can we just have a list then by next time of who these entities and agencies are?
Sure, if you guys want to just send it to me, if you, I mean, obviously the elected representatives at DB, we all know them by name. But I can poke around and, ask somebody like Chad if he could poke around and
Who knows in some of these agencies?
Yeah. which ones are even relevant.
Tom,
Right,
next week.
Certainly Tom, between now and then. If you would give it to him.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Let's do the list. A couple of things. We get Tom on the agenda for next time. Agreed?
Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Tom.
Okay, I'd like to get on the agenda for next time, a discussion of the, I call it the website, but it's really broader than that. It's how we're collecting and disseminating and sharing our information. What's there now, the old website, useful would probably, it ought to be a subpage someplace. Interfluke did a really good presentation on fish passage. All the different types of fish passages and what they are and the names and such. And I'd be happy to present that at some point.
The day that link doesn't work. I tried to get in that link, it wouldn't come up.
But I have that problem.
I know, but I wanted to see it online and I couldn't.
Murphy's Law is when you want to click on it, their server's down.
And
Are you talking
finally,
about the Mayo Mills stuff?
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I went
Yeah,
to that site and
actually looked, I
and it
just pulled
wouldn't
it
come
up.
up.
It's working for me. You must have bad luck. Yeah.
I knew you were looking for it, Sandy.
Sandy's got Spectrum, and they don't always work.
No,
Well,
I
there
don't.
you go.
And do I have you guys' permission to link back up with the ASF folks?
Please
Okay.
do.
You guys are all right with that? Yeah. Just not to do anything or say anything, but just to let them know we're here and.
We're still alive.
Okay,
Just a quick question. What was the outcome of the NETL? I saw some stuff in the emails that NETL, we can't see their proposal because it was in conjunction with the developer.
Yeah,
That's correct.
And there's no like copy hiding someplace.
I
That
have
we
not
know of.
come across.
Is it possible you could talk to the former developer and
I'm
ask
sorry.
him if he could?
I couldn't hear it.
I will call, I'll make an effort, I'll call up Jonathan, and I'll say, Jonathan, like, can we get a copy of the NAPL study that you did? You kept strictly within the committee. I'll ask him. and I'll go from there.
Okay,
I
so,
will approach it in a very positive way.
yeah,
Very aggressive.
And
Yeah,
respond in a very positive way.
positively, aggressively.
And finally, at our last meeting in an open session, Cheryl talked about the possibility of an alternative to any of this stuff. And I visited with Cheryl offline and got her agreement to give us that presentation at some point.
Yeah.
Get that on the agenda.
Sure.
I'm not sure how busy the next one is.
Is that three presentations at the next meeting?
That being, one is Tom.
I'll let Bill too.
You know, I'll do 25 minutes probably.
I don't know if I can
20
get
is
Chad
fine.
Perkins there, but he said he may go to the next one, so I don't know what, we looked at the timetable.
Two is Bill and three is
Interfluve, you were doing one.
is Cheryl.
I was just gonna suggest, if we're gonna do state reps and all that kind of stuff, why not just be one meeting, so it's not fragmented? And so we could have hopefully everyone here for one meeting and just knock it out of the park as that.
All the state reps,
We potentially could.
We'll do that
same
as a
room
special.
together in election season.
You never know,
Yeah,
you never know.
the timing isn't great.
Well,
My vote counts.
I mean, as far as like federal folks at their, kind of just hanging out, they're not in, they're in the middle right here. They're not supposed to be doing
I
anything.
don't know. It's just a listing.
Yeah, I think just the listing, and then we can figure out if we're gonna try to get them all in one room at one time, and it really probably should wait until after November election. Plus, anyway, we should do it after we've made, at least seen the Kleinschmidt report.
So if we have Tom and Bill and Cheryl, and then we had David timeline. Okay, with day one, David Kleinschmidt responds.
Right.
That's a pretty full agenda, isn't it?
It is. I wouldn't want to put anything else on there. However, I think that's good, because we don't really have, till the Kleinschmidt thing starts to roll. We're in just fact finding at this point.
Waiting for a vote. So those four things on the agenda? All right,
So you're saying not to talk to the reps now? He can,
Oh,
because he can recommend now, but
Yes.
he can't do anything actionable until
right.
he gets reelected.
Well, no, it's
good.
Yeah.
more, contacting him, and try to get him to give us some contact names.
Okay.
And
I
then,
can do that.
and then what we will want to do at some point is, I think after the Kleinschmidt report is in our hand, is try to get all of them together, to see what they can do to help us with wherever we're going. But if we could get names of the agencies, identify at least the agencies, if not a contact within the agency, because I don't have a clue how our state government is structured around dams. I mean, as we've been talking about, you look at all the acronyms that Chris listed at the federal level. I mean,
there's some state ones in there too.
yeah, yeah.
I can't tell whether-
Yeah, so it's just 4-letter acronyms all over the place. I
Chad
don't
is
know
very
what they
thorough.
mean.
So he'll look up some
All
stuff.
right, so I have 6 things on the agenda. Tom, an interview. Bill, a presentation. Cheryl, a presentation. Okay. David, a timeline cut,
And that shouldn't take more than a couple minutes,
even with this group. Right.
even with this one.
A discussion of the quote website, basically how we're presenting this stuff. And 6, I think a standing thing, and it really should be in its own letter, should be the funding committee. And you may say nothing to report this month, but it should be there every single time. Because that's gonna be critical, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, those 6 things, you mean that I'll have 7 or 8.
I was gonna say, Chris, you said that you were gonna present something? I have that.
Interfluve.
The interfluve.
Oh, so that's,
No, I think you need to just.
It's
pass
on
it
the
next
website,
time.
so.
Yeah, that could be.
cross
That
it
could
out.
wait. That could wait, right, yeah. Plus I'd have to find the PowerPoint that I said I had.
We can get-
And in the meantime, Chris, you're going to get back in contact with your,
Oh, I'm just gonna say we did.
Yep.
And they haven't gone away.
Yeah.
Okay,
So when I talk to Chad, should I just have him talk to us about hydro options? Because right now, like, we're not in the fish patch, we're in hydro. Should he be talking about hydro? And then when we're done the hydro process, in the next year, say he gets reelected, then come back and talk to him with, about sources and state agencies about funding the repairs. Right now, we're in the hydro process. He'd be focusing on that when he comes and speaks.
Well,
Any other state rep.
the dam, so the dam has to be fixed regardless, whether there's hydro or not. So I think just the best thing, to keep it loose with him, is just say, he knows what we're trying to do here. Who is it in the state government that has a stake in this? Which of the agencies need to sign off on things? We don't really, the consultants that we're gonna pay a lot of money to will go through that, but we're gonna want to suss out if there is any funding options, or how do we go about asking for funding for particular aspects? Because that's how this often works on a project basis, is your local reps bring it to Augusta. It gets into the budget, it gets voted in, it gets into the budget. It's not like they've got millions and millions of dollars sitting around for dam repairs all the time, but.
I asked the question a couple meetings ago. If we get the results of the Kleinsmith report and we discuss it thoroughly, will that be enough to go back to the town with a straight face and say, we have disposed of this question one way or the other?
Yes.
I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
So I'm not quite sure if we go through the Kleinsmith proposal and we agree among ourselves that that is sufficient for us to go to the town and say we ruled out power. I'm not quite sure why we want anybody else to weigh in on that at that point, or do we?
Well, I think, are you saying, because the town's gonna be making the decision, we go to them with the report saying, I think we're supposed to make the decision, yea or nay, present the information to them, to the town, and then they are to make the decision whether or not we keep the hydro.
That's correct. So my point is, as we review the Kleinsmith proposal, if we agree that it's done, is that sufficient for us to go to the town right then? Well, not that minute, but you get my point.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to
Good.
get that ball rolling.
That's fine. So we don't need anybody else weighing in at that point.
No,
We
it's
don't need
more,
4 of these.
Yeah, the problem is we're gonna beat this horse to death. I think Smith, we make a decision, we present it to the town says, okay or nay, and then we move on. I mean, that's.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, just so sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are we done?
I think that's done with the agenda. We have open session. But, if you got anything else?
I think people need to understand that we don't need to have 4 of these consultant agencies do this. I mean, we're putting our faith into one to do a
Yeah.
thorough and good job, because we don't have the time to keep second guessing and questioning, like you said, meetings before. This is who we trust, this is who we want to do it. If we decide, here's our recommendation to the board, we don't want to do it, this should be good enough.
Yeah. This is you all heard the term doctor shopping, where you just go to a doctor, go to the doctor. Yeah. This is like engineering shopping, and sure, if we went and spent $1 million on 15 different consultants, I'm sure we could get one to say whatever we want, but that's not the point. And this is the other thing we have to remind everybody about, is this isn't the first time. This is now like the 3rd study. We don't have an Intel in our hands, but that one came up negative. And then the prior committee, as part of the thing, that one came up negative. And so ours is actually the 3rd study, the recent study. And so, yeah, it should be fine.
So what are we doing?
We are now doing open session. Anybody have, yes, Steve?
Steve Robinson. The decision you just made, which the once Kleinschmidt's done, you can go ahead. I think the issue is really, if Kleinschmidt says it's not viable because the payback is X number of years, the next question is, did you go try to find the funding? I mean, as a taxpayer, it's like, how do you get to link those together? Because it probably isn't viable, I go with, but did you try to find the funding to make it viable? That's what I think you're missing. That's item number one, is just saying what Kleinschmidt says, well, no kidding, we've already been told that twice. But did we ever go try to find the money to come up with the $2.5 million to make it viable? Or do we want to do that? Does the town want to be a
Is that
utility?
something you could take to the town and discuss at the town?
Well, look, I don't know. I think it's like, it's a money's game. We all know that. It's how much impact is the taxpayer gonna have? I mean,
Well, I
that's
think,
what
I
you're
think you
trying
have
to
to
do.
identify, Kleinschmidt has to tell us whether there is an economic, is there any economic viability in hydro? That's what we
Right.
need to know, and I think you have already calculated that, but,
Well, yeah, but I mean, nothing. The problem is,
but
it depends what your payback criteria is. It depends if you get it funded. If you get the capital funded, it's probably viable.
Right, the thing is about, on the funding side, is it seems unlikely that somebody would want to invest in something that it's not a good investment from a financial standpoint.
Well, you're right. As far as a capitalist, venturist, they're not gonna find anybody. But if you go to the Office of the Energy, at the governor's office, and say, can you take some of that solar and wind money and shove it over to hydro, because we've got a historic thing in Dover-Foxcroft, and maybe Chad can help, but if you find that hook to say, we've got something different here, can we get, there's money in the state, it is a way to steer it. I mean, my only point is, you gotta try to do that, and Sandy's working on it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't cut yourself short, say, once Kleinschmidt's done, we're done, because
what I think what we're saying is not that we're done, but that we need to present it to the town with the information and then have the town say, yes, we want to pursue further. Is that what we're?
It's really the timeline.
Well, let's follow this path down a bit.
Well, no, I agree.
Let's follow this path down a bit. So we look at this and the client comes back and we all look at this and say, this is not a pure thing we want to do. Is there, your point, is there a chance that somebody could fund the capital cost, right? What if we took just that to the town and discussed it with them at our town meeting? And based on this, the question for the town is, should we make one last attempt to see if there's anybody who's willing to fund the capital costs? They would say, oh, hell yes, or heck yes, I'm sorry. And so we make a call. We could make the call before we had the town meeting to the state office of renewable hydro, or whatever.
I think that would be the better way to do it. I do.
Well, so what you're
Because
saying,
to some extent, I agree with Steve. I mean, I have all along thought there really is no way this is gonna work to do the hydro. Until I read all these things and the examples that I could find where people were willing to pay money was to restore hydro. So I think perhaps even before we get that back, we've got some numbers, right? I mean, we've got the Goral and,
Gomez.
yeah, I don't.
Don't be totally caught with us, our rights.
You say Goral, but I knew that wasn't.
How long does that
Anyway.
extend the timeline?
Maybe it doesn't.
I'm not sure it does.
Keep going.
I think, I'm not saying go out and find somebody to say, oh, I'll give you $2.5 million.
but is there any possibility?
But to see if there is any entity that has an interest in preserving that kind of power source.
All right.
And I don't think I think we could look for that now.
The three things. If we were to contact our federal representatives, the
In state, I think.
no, I'm coming to that. And we were to contact the state office of whatever, and our reps can get us that information and make some quick phone calls in the next couple of weeks. Steve, we could have, and absolutely not, that's the stupidest thing we ever heard of, or yeah, you might try, but we'd be that far ahead if we went to the town meeting. How's that?
I think you're right, Chris. It's really trying. It's getting to the point that we've tried and there's nothing out there.
Right.
So this is the numbers, town. I mean, It is what it is. The payback's 35 years and
What, I guess my question is, because we're gonna have a timeline, so how do we set this up on the timeline? I mean, do we say, we make the calls now, we still have a Klein Schmidt report date, and then we're gonna have a town meeting on December 14th, let's say, you know?
So we have enough information right now that could go to the state and federal partners based on what we already have, which Bill's gonna be working on and we'll consolidate. And to say, I'm just gonna put this in, just, this is a marginal producing dam. And that's one thing that we have to remember when looking at, oh, so-and-so got funding for their dam, the one in Freedom, for example.
They were very marginal.
They were very marginal, but they were also only trying to provide power for their building. So, and they had other,
When they shared it with the town.
and they shared with the town. They also-
See, this is easy. You pick up, I'll do it. Pick up the phone. Call these 3 or 4 entities, okay? And just say, put it to them, and, we're looking for potential funding sources. Can you go?
And that's where our representatives can help by getting the phone number with a name
Correct.
for.
I am willing to take that task on.
So are they gonna come back and tell us, well, it's viable if we spend like $5 million to do this? Now, I'm probably certain that if I took that to the voters in this environment,
No,
Yeah,
I'm not even asking that. I'm just direct to Steve's point. We think that we've got a couple of $1 million, maybe 3, to restore power. Is there any entity that might be interested in funding those capital costs?
With the projected output and other pieces of
correct.
information
That's
we
right.
have.
Just that simple
Yeah.
question.
We know that.
And all we're looking for, I think, Steve, at this point, is for them to say, are you kidding us nuts? Or, oh, yeah, that's a possibility.
well, you know, I said this at Central Hall last November. I mean, I stood up and said, the problem with the state is they fund wind, they fund solar, and they don't fund hydro. They do some money biomass.
Well, this might be.
Is there a way to get them to say, we got an issue in Dover-Foxcroft to funnel some of that renewable energy money, whether it's through efficiency main trust or the governor's energy office?
So let's at least follow that trail a little bit, those breadcrumbs, a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm willing to take that on, because Sandy will help me. And we can come back with, some approaches.
I think that's it, the trigger to say you kicked every stone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think it goes back to Chris's point, we've turned over every rock, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to, I totally get it.
even if we don't find funding sources, that go to the board vote first, like, cause let's say we don't find the funding source, but they still say, well, $3 million or 5 million, whatever it is, here we can make it viable long term. Voters still, hey, there's still money, but we'd have to spend it ourselves. And the voters would have to, or the board would have to say, okay, this is what we want to do because we can't find anybody to fund it, but yet.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, and this is one thing I'm hoping to get from the Klein Schmidt report, is that they might come back and say, for a for-profit company, there's just no way. It's just stupid numbers. They're gonna laugh you right out. It's not gonna happen. The next question is, well, is it viable for a nonprofit, which the town is, in that technical sense? What's the payback on that? We're not trying to mark it up with a profit. We're trying to offset costs for the townspeople. And it might still come back as, no, you gotta be kidding me. You'd be better taking your money and, heating your home with it. That it could very well come back to that. And, but those questions should be asked, and we have that opportunity with Klein Schmidt when we'll get the report. And then we will know kind of on the scale of things, like, are we just over the line from it being viable, or are we so far over the line that we could take the comedy tour on the road and get a lot of chuckles from people, but we're not gonna get any traction. And I personally, I don't know where we are in that. I don't know. And some of it is because of the issues we've asked Klein Schmidt to look at, again, the net metering and other things, and to really be sure of those numbers. So I think that If it came back as being somewhat viable for a nonprofit, then yes, Sean, it is possible that the town might want to float that as a possibility. Get it long-term bonded and say that, here's the payback and put it out to the voters, because of course the voters have to approve and stuff like that. But if we're not convinced,
Right.
then we shouldn't be trying to, confuse anybody.
I think one of the hurdles we have is, this isn't an operating hydro that is getting old, that needs some seals and some, turbine, I mean, we don't have one.
Right.
I've never seen it, but I understand it isn't there, it doesn't work,
No,
so
it's
you're
all-
basically starting from scratch, which is a whole different thing than restoration.
Yeah, and again, there was that one example from Sandy's research. As a company, that's what they do. They have 13 dams, they have hydro already working, and they're looking at the cost of maintaining them. And from an economic standpoint, the seals and the maintenance on the gates, they're looking at it and saying, no, we're better off going to Vegas with it.
Yeah, so that's our problem, we really don't have any, we don't have hydro, how's that?
Yeah.
We have a license, but
We
don't
have,
hydro.
right, we have the.
Well,
potential
that's a
for it.
good point. There is no hydro.
There is no hydro, we have a license.
We have the ability to do it if we want.
So if we,
Unfortunately, we can't sell that license. If we
Nobody else
could,
wants
maybe we
Yeah,
could.
nobody, we already
That's,
tried.
that's the hurdle right
We
there.
had some, but we talked about some of the options for the dam. One of the options is selling.
Nobody wanted to.
What? No, we haven't put it out for bid, but that's the extreme end of what we're not
Hang a
talking
for
about.
sale sign out in
We,
front of the,
we talked about it in that meeting in August, that there are some other outcomes, but the outcomes we're looking at now are focused on hydro, no hydro, fixed dam. But that's always there.
Let's sell it for, 20,000, it's yours, and let somebody else buy it.
There's also a bridge in New York that you can buy.
I could see the First Amendment plan, which is, we think it might be viable. We have a for sale sign in the front.
Crumbling piece of concrete precision.
Yeah, this could all be yours.
All right.
One other statement, I mean, just, when you talk about the numbers, and you're gonna build the template, and you're gonna load it with info flows, I mean, numbers, be careful, I mean, that's just, I mean, we started out, I know, you need placeholders to start, Bill, I get it. But, we went from 4.6, Gomez and Sullivan, then it went to 5 to 8, and then it ended up at 10 million in the paper, and I don't think anybody.
My objective is we're not, that argument has to be gone. We have to have something that we all agree to, and everybody can go right back to the individual line item. Here's how much gravel we're gonna buy. Now, it may actually be double that, but here's how much gravel we're gonna buy.
And validate them.
And validate,
But this is not the job of the engineering companies.
that's what they will do, but at some point, we'll get a better number.
That's why we.
Well, I
in my
hope
mind,
somebody's
we're
got a better
spending money
math
on
brain than I do, because you asked me, it would be real quick.
But we don't know. Okay, so are we committed to at least take that step? Hopefully that's something for the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Sandy,
And
I'll
I'll
call,
work with you
I'll
on
call, push God of you. Thank you. I'll call you offline. Okay, what else? So,
Cheryl?
Yeah, sure, Katha. So why did you guys choose Kleinschmidt? Because it's a engineering firm. If you were gonna have somebody that crunched numbers, then they would be relatively new numbers, right? Because the old committee did the old numbers, right? Why are you paying them $20,000 to crunch older numbers, or not inviting them to use things that might, I don't know if we're even ready to do that, because we haven't exhausted the research. We really haven't even begun it on the new technology. And if you're looking at the old hydro, it's still the old premise. You're trying to look at the new technology, because just like Steve said, the old is dead, because it's been either pulled out or it's defunct or something. We all know that from the old dam. So the only option, if you were to do hydro, would be new technology. And we haven't had the research done to determine any kind of even a ballpark figure for a potential, or even how to put it into working with our impound or anything else, because it can't be off of the old dam. So if you can't, know the numbers or have even an idea of what the new technology is going to cost, how can you ask Kleinschmidt for an evaluation on the numbers, unless of course you're just trying to get a confirmation to slam down hydro and say it's off the table?
I think You mind if
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I did actually make some calls to other companies. I called Natel actually, and that's why I want to see the Natel report. And they based their numbers on new technologies.
Their
Fish
technology.
safe technology that's been proven. That's why this town in Freedom or this group of Freedom got a grant to allow them to install it to see. So I think, what's that?
As a C?
No,
And C.
and C, they basically.
Discover.
They basically utilized Natel and got a grant to install Natel's new turbines in to see if they were fish safe. They did a study on salmon or whatever. I can't remember what species they were looking at going through it.
Waters.
Yeah, something like that. But, and I think a lot of the engineering companies and reports they've gotten are basing their numbers on newer technology. They're not, they basically said what was sitting in that hydro house is gone. So this is what it's gonna cost to install the newest technology.
State of the art.
The state of the art. And at least that's what I saw when I looked at this stuff. And so I don't think they're basing the numbers unreasonably. I think if you went with trying to find old equipment to install, it'd be a lot cheaper because people could probably try to sell it on a discount, eBay. But I think that they have based a lot of their numbers on the newer technology. At least, but that's why I want to see the Natel report. I mean, I'd like to see where they came out because I haven't been able to see that exact number.
So it doesn't matter if you're gonna put in a fish safe or what could be an older technology, non-fish safe. You buy the turbine's one piece of it, that's equipment, but then you have to do all the work to be able to work around the powerhouse, the building, the gates, the walls and all that other stuff. And all that has to be done no matter new technology, old technology, this technology, that technology. So you're gonna have a project that's gonna have that turbine in there. We have to assume that the only turbine we can put in there is one that's gonna be fish safe. And that's the newer technology. The limitation we're really coming up against, I think that Kleinschmidt's gonna show is we can only put in a 0.3 megawatt turbine. And that's our limitation because that's where the license is. And that's gonna be the critical factor that's going to then, it doesn't matter if it's a fish safe, non-fish safe, floating, non-floating, this, that, the other, that's all we have. And so any budget that we come up with that's gonna say 1 million, 2 million, 5 million to fix the powerhouse portion, that's gonna be there. And all of the increments or all the pieces of that are gonna be very similar. You're gonna have to spend money. It's not gonna be free.
So are you saying that Kleinschmidt is gonna be the guy that decides what we use for technology if we go that direction? And so that's what they're gonna base the numbers on?
I don't think that's what I think my understanding and correct me if I'm wrong, that we are looking at Kleinschmidt is going to review the previous studies and then come up, say, yes, these are valid studies and these are valid numbers. They're basically being the auditor, I guess you would say. They're going to look at the numbers and they're going to say, yeah, these look right, or these look wrong. And they're also, I think they're doing an economic feasibility study or something like that, where they're going to say, based on energy generation, this is what you're going to be able to produce.
And then you can put various levels of, what's Steve's point, various levels of what that is worth. Didn't also Kleinschmidt do work back in 2007 when it was part of,
Yeah, they
when
were.
with the town and the others? So one of the reasons I was, for Kleinschmidt was they already know the facility and they're not going to have to spend hours, many, many hours at $150 or $200 an hour for consulting time to come up here, look, check and do other things. They already have a good idea of what's here. So that's why the bill for them is only coming in at under 20,000. Otherwise, if they didn't know, we would be spending that 100,000.
Yeah, if you went out and hired another engineering company to start from scratch and go through it, you'd be looking at probably more than that.
Yeah.
So, just to build off of what Bill said, the reason Kleinschmidt was approached was because they are local, they know Maine waters, so they're right based in Pittsfield. So, and like Bill said, they're familiar with our structure already. So that's why they were approached in that aspect.
Finally,
Marcus. My thought with Cheryl, and I'm sorry to speak, but I think you might be trying to say, but in my opinion is you're thinking new generation hydro, not necessarily using the dam and a turbine, more out into river, which means not using the dam at all, but using the flow of the river. So what Cheryl's asking is kind of, why aren't we looking at other things? But what we're strapped with, which is our mission statement, to keep the dam in the middle of the town. So it's all to do with keeping the dam. If we're gonna keep the dam there, we might as well use that with the thing. So if we're gonna go with your thoughts on some inter-river generational, whatever you call it, then there's no need for the dam. Which we get back to, we need to keep the impoundment. That's what we've been strapped
Yeah,
with.
I see.
Keep the impoundment. So asking about Klein Schmidt to me is like, well, that's because we're strapped with keeping the impoundment, keeping the lump of concrete. It's got nothing to do with looking at a 5-10 year project of, we could run pontoons from the cove to the academy all the way across the river and have them turning wonderful hydropowered, if somebody started that.
Out there, scope.
That may not get past the town either, especially if they're fluorescent orange, but
Okay,
I'm just saying, that's why we're looking at Klein Schmidt. It's the concrete.
I would agree with Bill, because we also need to be, good stewards of the taxpayer money, Yeah, it's great, we could have 3 different engineering companies, 3 different options, that's the, best way to do things, have all these different options, but that's not the best way to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. That's 20,000, that's not bad.
well, I'm open. You asked the question, very simple question. Why did they choose Klein Schmidt? Okay. Hearsay and scuttlebutt, but I think it's accurate. Okay. Number one, Steve actually brought up dam committee number 1, the fact that the economic analysis was relatively weak in the Gomez and Sullivan dam analysis that are powerhouse study. Klein Schmidt then admitted, yeah, we're out of state. We really don't have a lot of experience with main net energy.
You said Klein Schmidt.
Oh, yeah. No, actually, Klein Schmidt said, I'm sorry, yes, Gomez and Sullivan said, we don't know that. So, our town manager made a bunch of calls, his buddies who do this for a living, and they all said, oh, there's one firm that can give you the economic analysis that you're looking for, and that's Klein Schmidt. Done. So, out came this request for proposal, and the scope of work had 8 items in it, and that's what they responded. It's gonna cost us 19,000 some change. And that's how that came about. Now, this group is satisfied that as far as the analysis of the Gomez and Sullivan report, the completion of that analysis, that is the economic viability, will be settled as a result of the Klein Schmidt report. Not to mention Cheryl's report for session next week to talk about completely different ways to do things. Correct? They're separate questions. Did that answer your question? Okay, good.
And I think it is a good point to make is that the town voted essentially, and this is why I'm trying to change the way we're phrasing things. They essentially voted to keep the impoundment, the water behind the dam. So we are not tasked with finding an alternative for hydro per se. That wasn't what the town voted on. The town did not vote on, do we have hydro or not hydro? It was, do we keep the dam and the impoundment, or do we remove the dam and lose the impoundment? And so the town voted to retain the impoundment. So that, we're constrained on that.
And we'll talk about this, just a quick interrupt and go off from your question, Cheryl, so forgive me. Part of what the town voted on, people in town voted, was not accepting the removal of the dam and accepting money from an outside source, and then have landscaping and other things done.
Yeah, it was
The
complicated.
town did not, the people in the town did not, there was information put out that said it's gonna cost 10 million bucks to fix the dam if we don't. The town did not vote on keeping the dam per se, because the town may come back in the period between now and next June and say, hey, this is $12-15 million. It's gonna cost us a typical house taxpayer $600-800 a year, blah, 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 blah. And then at that point, they're gonna say, no, we don't want the dam. So we're still going within exactly the guidelines you said. We're not talking about removing the dam. They talk about keeping the impoundment, but there's a cost associated with that.
Yeah, unfortunately, what we weren't able to do with the first vote was to give people two equal options, or equally weighted options. One is remove the dam, somebody else is gonna pay for it, 0 cost.
Yes.
Keep the dam, and it's gonna cost you we've already got the engineering. And I'll explain why this didn't happen, but we weren't able to say, we've already had 3 bids out and this is how much it's gonna cost. And the reason why we didn't do that is because it made sense to remove it in the mind of the first committee. Financially, it just made sense to remove the dam at 0 cost. And so there was no like, okay, let's spend $500,000 of taxpayer money to get engineering studies done and solicit bids from that. So that wasn't done. And now we are kind of doing that now because of the voters' decision. So it is what it is. And as Bill says, and we talked about it up front at the very beginning of the meeting, it could very well be that we do get a number and the townspeople thumbs down. And then
What do we do?
We have faith in the voters of what we do. What else?
Yeah, I was wondering why it wasn't like an accounting firm instead of an engineering.
it has to
firm.
be an engineering.
But I can see
Yeah.
what you guys were saying that it has.
They have to question, we're asking them to question the other engineers'
Right.
assumptions.
And also they have to know the dam, like you said, they know the dam.
And we're really hopeful that with that presentation, there may be other ideas that are out there that are really good,
Yeah.
that might be worth looking
I would say.
Just one extra thing, I'll shut up.
at.
You know, thinking of this, I think consulting engineers are, you know, whatever they are. I am one, so I understand. But is the first engineer this thing? Is there a way, I don't know what the FERC list is about what has to happen to that dam. You know, what Interflu said, that needs to restore it to save it. I don't know what steps, how much concrete, the bedrock that,
We actually did a PowerPoint last week.
okay.
Between Dan, Gomez and Sullivan.
Yeah.
We have a list.
But is there a way to take that to Haley's, Chimbro, Reed and say, hey, this is what has to be done to that dam, can you give us a price? And, you know, you can
No,
engineer it to death, but it's
Yeah, but-
concrete.
Unless we're saying that we've got the money and we're ready to go with it. If I was an engineering firm, I wouldn't want to tie up,
Construction firm, yeah.
a construction firm. I wouldn't want to tie up any.
Well, could you give a ballpark guess?
Or
You
actually,
know, back when,
Actually,
hey, what would the spots we want to do?
But they
Yeah,
can't do
I
that
don't like
without
fish ball
ballpark passage.
The town of Quebec did this, they did theirs, a few years ago, the town of Quebec had to fix their dam,
but you got 2 things.
right?
Number one, would an entity like that be interested? And number 2, would we with perfect confidence be able to go back to the town? No, number 2 is get through the first thicket. Who's gonna do it? And number 3, then to go back to the town with perfect confidence that we've turned over every rock. But sure, I don't know, somewhere along the line, somebody knows somebody at Haley, sure, are you guys interested in this? If they are, what the hell, why not?
Somebody did it in 1980, the last time that was referred was 1980.
Yeah, it's gone, well, so,
Take a look at the deficiency.
yeah,
list.
it's, the deficiency list has gone beyond that. It's going to be probably some company out of the west or something, it's gonna be a larger engineering firm because,
Well, wasn't there issues with the way it's sitting on
Yeah.
the full ledge? It has to be, because FERC missed a lot of it, and then I guess Gomez and Sullivan came in, or somebody came in and said, you have to knit, you got to pin this, you're gonna have to do this.
You said FERC missed a lot, but they're the ones you're trying to
Right.
meet the standard.
But what happened was when they started, when the other dam committee when Interflu and whatever.
Actually,
I was reading a lot of this and their list was much longer than FERC.
Well, of course, because they want to take the dam out.
Well, they-
It's way too high.
they also,
Yes, do this, do
they
this.
also came with the water was lower and they were able to look at it.
Go to the Bayou Mill Dam Study website. A lot of that documentation is there that talks of Gomez and
Yeah, I
Sullivan.
mean, they have the numbers and say,
It's
you
all
might,
there.
you can probably get something out of it because you could look at it and say,
No, probably
and I
not.
totally agree with you because I was looking at it and I saw conflicting numbers. I mean, I saw 4 million here and somebody else was saying this and FERC, I was surprised because I was looking at FERC's list and said, well, that's not that bad.
I mean, the one you showed, Chris, Gomez and Sullivan said 2.5 to do the dam, 2.1 to do the hydro, right? It's 4.6.
Actually, yeah, that's right, but
Right.
it all reconciles if you take all of those data points. And I should send, Alpine might be willing to send you a copy of that PowerPoint. So you have at least a complete listing of all the deficiencies.
I want
Wait till next week. Or next meeting, excuse me.
Okay.
I think I'll be able to deal with your question. Because it's not just the one page of Gomez and Sullivan or the one page of this or the one of that. we've got to have some way, and that was the thing that was, you know, mind boggling to me is I don't have one page where all of it is there for capital and all of it is there for continuing
Right.
costs and that. And then if we see that there and we see the various options, we're gonna be able to say, okay, we don't have to agree with the numbers the first time out, but by the time we get to the end of this, we'll want to have some
And I
numbers.
don't think, I mean, you're probably right, I don't know, if, Kimbrough, Reed, Sargent, or Haley's would do it, but somehow you need a validation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When's our next meeting?
Yeah, you'll see that there's even questions whether, I mean, there was I looked at a couple of those things and was wondering like, can we even fix it? Because the bedrock is being eroded.
When's our next meeting?
That's my biggest fear is exactly what you said. We're gonna go to the voters and they're gonna say no to the vote, right? I have a feeling in this environment, that's what's gonna happen. They're gonna say no to fixing this and we're back to square one.
Wait a minute.
Well, the dam can blow out and it disappears.
But it's a low risk dam.
It's a low risk dam.
It's a low risk dam.
We drag our feet long enough, it might take care of itself.
When's our next meeting?
Yes, next meeting. We're looking at, 2 weeks from today would be the 16th of October.
Everybody okay?
Already mid-October. Incredible. Is that all right for everybody?
Same place.
Can we kind of
When's
move
the
to
select
simply 5:15 instead of 5?
I'd
Is that
appreciate it.
like
We could do that.
easier for you?
Sure.
Yes.
What,
Everybody all right with
15 minutes is like, come
15
on.
minutes?
Or you can start without me and I can.
No, but I'm just saying.
Oh,
Five
5:15 better for you?
It's just, I'm serious, man. It's like they have Big Brother's watching you. So if you walk out the door at 5 o'clock and
So,
5 minutes,
so what's good for you?
5:15 is fine. 5:10 actually is fine too. 5:15.
Why don't we do 5:15? Because that's easier to remember. Is that all right with everybody?
Did they put the pledge of allegiance on the other minutes, on the other action?
Not this last
With the
one,
board?
but.
We do that. If he wants, we should put that on the agenda.
Your favorite meeting.
I agree with you.
All
All
right.
right,
If this thing gets contentious, we can start with a prayer.
there we go. Dinner time. Motion to, oh, right there.
Second.
Tracy's first. We've
So,
got,
I think it's-
Sandy,
before we
second.
break, Eleanor, when I first met you, you said you were tentative. Are you still tentative or are you never coming back?
Oh, I'll be back.
We haven't scared you away yet.
No. I worked for lawyers. I'm not scared of anything.
Oh, well, then we should be scared of you then.
Now you know what you think.
Dinner is over, it started at 5:30.
It's like me in the office meeting.
Save you a plane.
I'm telling you, that's exactly what this environment, property